rediscovering and embracing a healthy relationship with food is about so much more than just the food. And while I talk about food a lot, and especially indulging in my wicked sweet tooth, it's really about setting yourself free from the sort of restrictions that other people have placed in telling you what is acceptable
That is
to eat,
correct.
where, how to look, what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's really empowering to know and understand that you can create exactly what you want. And here at Our Kitchen Classroom, we teach parents especially, but children of all ages, that they can create the life that they want to lead. And it starts by empowering them, teaching them how to prepare the food that nourishes them and the people they love.
This is the wonderful Karen Ricks. What made you into you?
I describe myself as an educator. I do feel like first and foremost, I am an educator.
Mm-hmm.
I've been teaching for more than 20 years, and that is where the majority of my professional training comes in. But I'm also a nomadic chef. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. We are world schoolers, and so we do a lot of things unconventionally. So there isn't really one all-encompassing title. First and foremost, I will say that my name is Karen Ricks, and I am the head chef of Our Kitchen Classroom. And then when people go and explore our website and more of the things that we do and share, like on social media and online, then they get a chance to see that what I do is about so much more than cooking or teaching. But
I get such a kick out of you. You in the rain?
It wasn't raining. That's actually a fountain out in the town square. No, I know, it was hilarious. My son was the one taking pictures, and there was a crowd gathered around of all these people looking at the crazy black lady like, what's she doing playing in the water over there?
You exude joy.
That is exactly the goal. And it's a huge part of the way I teach is by setting the example. And it's something that I've always done. You know, as a child, I was always that person who hated hearing the adults say, do as I say, not as I do. It's like, well, if you're telling me to do it, then it should be important for you to do too, right? Why can't you do that? And so that's always, you know, the teacher and the parent that I strive to be. And from the very first time that we set foot in that square and I saw the water going in the fountains, I was like, oh, I have to go and play in that.
So you play with your food, but you also play with life. I mean, really, seriously.
That's honestly the transition for the tagline that's going like in my group, on my website, everywhere for 2019. That's where we're moving toward. Play with your food and play
with your food. To me, you're like the embodiment of intuitive living. Like you exude living large. And you know, this is sort of the theme of people recovering from restricted eating is that they don't want to take up space. They don't want to take up space.
Mm-hmm. And my husband and I have this conversation all the time. What I feel is a lot of the negativity and still, honestly, the restrictions that are involved in people who are on this journey toward, you know, recovery with food and exercise and whatever. It's because there's always been this sort of pressure of everything being too much, you know, eating too much food, exercising too much, whatever. Yes. And going the opposite direction and embracing it all, it's really freeing. And starting with the food aspect of it, it really, I've noticed, it spills into every area of life. And, you know, by, like I said, embracing it, by really, like you said, acknowledging that it's not too much. It's exactly the amount that I need right now in my life, wherever I am, physically, emotionally, wherever. That's how you find the freedom. That's, you know, where we begin to move forward.
Oh my God, that really is so true. So your tagline, play with food. Tell me what that means.
Well, it is. It's really fun. And it kind of tends to rub people the wrong way at first because, like a lot of people, you know, I grew up with adults around me saying, you know, don't play with your food. But one of the things that I love about what I do is I get to be a bit of a rebel. You know, I get to buck the system and do exactly the opposite of all the things that I didn't like growing up as a child, all the things that I hated, feeling restricted in this box
You know what?
coming up.
I hope you don't mind if I interrupt you for a moment. I'm so interested in sort of your path. So when you say that you were in a box and that all the adults were telling you not to play with your food, you know, what was your relationship to food as you were growing up? I'm curious.
Well, I have always loved food, and my parents loved food too, but we didn't always have the means to enjoy good food on a regular or consistent basis. I remember in the good times, then, there was always plenty of good food and it was cause for celebration. And then there were the lean times when, there might not have been so much to go around. And so there was no excuse for playing with or wasting food because it was very precious and you needed to eat what you had because there might not be any more. Does that make sense?
No, that's absolutely understandable. Yeah. The more kind of with the deprivation.
A lot growing up.
Where did you grow up, Karen?
I grew up in San Diego, California.
Oh, in the States.
Yes. I was, I was the oldest of 5 children in the house at different points in my childhood. And so there were as many as 7, sometimes as few as 3 in my household during my childhood. And so, like I said, we loved good food, and in the good times there was plenty of it. But when there wasn't always so much, sometimes it was a fight. And so my relationship to food very early on was a lot about binging because there was food to have. Yes. And then scarcity and just really enjoying every precious morsel when there wasn't so much. And as I said, my parents loved food and they gave me a wonderful appreciation for good food. And the more we had, the better the food that was. So I really credit them for that love of food. And my siblings will tell you, actually, I just had a chance to hang out with some of my siblings over at a wedding, a family wedding recently. And they were teasing me about how when I was a child, I might be making something as simple as peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for everybody. And they used to say I would take such a long time. They were like, just slap it together. You don't have to make it look pretty. Just give us a sandwich. You've always had this enjoyment of putting together well-crafted, beautiful, in appearance as well as taste, plates of food. And so that's something that has been instilled in me from a very young age. My mother was also a professional educator, retired now. But when I was about 6 years old, I remember asking her, I want to cook. I really love, whatever such and such that you made. Can you teach me how to make it? And my mother, who was intent on raising confident and independent children, said, you know where the cookbooks are, you know how to read and follow directions, off you go.
Wow.
So I started cooking, not just for myself, but for my family at a very young age. And it's always something enjoyable.
Okay, I'm sorry, but wow. So I just have to say this generation, if you don't mind, of parents, I don't necessarily see them being so hands-on. At 6, go figure it out there. Don't touch the stove, Johnny. Be careful. Yes. I mean, that's what I envision.
No, you don't see a lot of that. And that's a part of why I'm so excited at this new evolution of my work and my life, because I have the opportunity to work with parents and help to demonstrate to them that even at 6, even younger than 6, their children are not only more than capable, but very interested in exploring how the food comes to their plates. And that it's not only beneficial for them in terms of their self-confidence, but it's also a very educational process, and it's great for family bonding.
That is so true. Can I just say that in my office, I see the opposite. I see people who really never had family dinners, family meals. Meals were thrown together in front of and watched in front of the television. So what you're describing is such a beautiful concept. You're starting young, really showing them how to appreciate all the pleasures of food, because it is meant to be enjoyed. It's not just to about nutrition. Yes.
Yes, yes. And so much research has shown that there are so many benefits across all areas of life for people who enjoy family meals together. And so my goal is not only to encourage more families to enjoy dinner around a table, actually talking and interacting with one another, but to further extend the process, to start with the very sourcing of ingredients, the decisions about what to eat and how to prepare it, and then getting everybody's hands involved in the process, from cooking to plating, enjoying, and even the cleaning up afterward.
Can I just say that's such a big part, just teaching kids responsibility.
It is.
Again,
It absolutely is.
it's ridiculous when I say I sound like an old lady. It's like back in the day, but I can remember we had to clean up. We had to take care of things. Nowadays, don't worry, go do your homework. I mean, that's what I hear all the time.
All the time. And part of the reason that this came so prominently to the fore for me was after my husband and I left the United States to live and work in Japan back in 2007. And I was really excited to be moving to this country where I knew it was very common for women to be stay-at-home mothers, to be homemakers, and it was not a bad thing. In fact, it was expected. And so it shocked greatly to meet and to talk with so many mothers who did not even allow their children in the kitchen. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Japanese obento, the little lunch boxes, but I knew mothers who would literally get up 2 hours before their children to begin preparing these very elaborate lunch boxes for husbands, for children to take to work and to school. I mean, they put a lot of time and effort into this.
Yes.
And it's one if you love to do it. And I met plenty of parents who love to do that. It's fun. But I also met women who resented that as well. And I thought it a very strange dichotomy to both resent the work, but also prevent your children from having a hand in the process. And so it didn't make
I agree. And can I just say how interesting, I'm going back. I want to know what spurred your interest in moving from San Diego or wherever you and your husband lived in the US to Japan. That's a very big difference.
It was a huge leap. And initially I wasn't even on board. My husband and I had already been married for 7 years, and we had crisscrossed the country, first courtesy of Uncle Sam, and then pursuing our individual passions for work and teaching. And my husband was really excited about teaching in Japan. He'd been studying martial arts, especially judo, for many years. And so I think that was a big part of the pull. And so when he accepted a position with a school in Japan, it was a huge thing for us. It was a drastic change. And I was initially against it, but I thank him on a very regular basis now for helping push me out of my comfort zone, because it was the start of an amazing new chapter in our lives together.
Did you have a child at that time when you first?
We did not. Our son was actually born in Japan, and he spent his first 6 years of life there. In fact, he grew up in the International Montessori School that we founded there. And that's where kind of this next iteration of our work, teaching and cooking together, really started to bloom, because this concept, as I said, of having the children actually have a hand in the cooking was a very strange thing. And so when we started our school, that was a really integral part of what we did. And after, at the time that we sold it all to begin traveling the world full time, we were literally cooking snacks and lunches with the children in our preschool program between the ages of about 2.5 and 6 every single day.
You're not joking that younger than 6 can learn how to cook. 2.5. I love it.
Yes.
Wow.
And it was, like I said, it's an integral part of learning. And in the Montessori pedagogy, it's all a part of the practical life experience. And so much more than just being like a single subject matter. It's a wonderful way to help integrate things like reading, obviously with the recipes and things that are involved, and math with the measuring, calculations, and there's so much science. The chemistry of cooking is absolutely magical. And now as we travel the world, there's so much language and history and culture and geography involved in learning different dishes from different countries and how they come together and where the ingredients come from. There's just so much learning to be had at every single meal. It's an exciting process to pursue.
I have to just tell you that even talking to you is
Yes.
making me excited to want to prepare something. I don't know, you have to tell me what to prepare.
We prepare all manner of things from every corner of the globe, and the foods that we cook are really a reflection of us and our experiences. And I didn't really begin to understand that as much until we started this process of cooking with the children. And part of what we did at our school was use the food as yet another learning material in exploring our international education. So we would talk about, say, Mexico for a month or so, and we would throw a Mexican fiesta at the end, and we would invite the families of all the children to come, and we made Mexican food, and we'd listen to music, and the kids would dress up, they made piñatas, we'd play games, sing songs, they practiced speaking Spanish, and we got so excited about that process that we did for years in our school that when we eventually went to live in Mexico, it was not like we were really doing anything different. It was just an extension of what we had been doing in the classroom for so long.
Oh, I have so many questions. So so you're talking about first in Japan, you started to this concept, and you're saying that the parents came in and became involved in also doing the cooking and learning about different things. That's fantastic.
Yes, so, we had regular events at our school, specifically for the school families, and then also broader events within our community, where the children and the families would come together and cook different dishes and then share them. So we had like pop-up restaurant events at our school. We had helped to host and cook food for an annual international festival within the community where we made like over 250 portions of different types of foods to sell and serve within the community. And we would include a number of different activities along with that, including reading different books and, like I said, singing and playing games and practicing other languages. It was a lot of fun.
Oh my goodness, it's living.
It is.
So then I heard, then you traveled to Mexico. What's been, so, I mean, now I don't know where I know you're in Albania. We'll get to that. Okay, take me through your journey. So you sold your school, and you decided to do
sold
something.
It all, like 99% of everything. We packed everything into a couple of suitcases and a couple of carry-on backpacks, and we left Japan and went to Italy first. That was where I attended cooking school in Sicily.
Oh my goodness. Okay, you must tell me about that. I have to know about cooking school in Italy.
It was one of the most marvelous experiences. I still struggle sometimes to wrap my brain around it. And so much of the work that we're doing now, it was really, it all started to blossom, to really explode as more than just food, but a completely different way of life while we were in Italy. So we sold it all in Japan, and we left and we went to Sicily. And it's this tiny little town in Sicily, and this cooking school, the Anna Tascalanza cooking school in Valle d'Olmo, is on this enormous sustainable estate. The family for generations has grown and produced so many of the ingredients, not only that they use for the cooking school, but they have a winery, so they have massive vineyards, and they had grown all manner of wheat before that as well. And so we have these beautiful orchards and herb and vegetable gardens, and they have flocks of sheep and chickens, and they also grow olives. So we had olives and the olive oil that was produced on the estate. And for the 3 months that we were completely immersed in Sicilian culture, we studied sustainable food and the history of Sicilian food specifically, and a few other regions within Italy. This myth of the kind of oneness of homogeneity of Mediterranean food as we had guest chefs coming in from all over the place. And throughout the process, I got to be the sort of student that I always wanted to be, again, really fully diving in and immersing myself with all of my senses in making pastas and pruning grapevines and making cheeses and milking sheep and
Oh
just
my.
all
Wow.
it was magnificent.
Sounds it. Wow. I'm living vicariously hearing this story.
It was incredible.
Where did you go after that?
After Italy, we spent about a month in the UK exploring London, and then we went to Mexico. And I had an opportunity to practice the Spanish that I grew up with in Southern California after 2 decades of it being pretty dusty. And also to work with not only a bunch of amazing local ingredients, but also some amazing local chefs. And the process of actually seeing, the corn kernels coming in these massive bags, and not only purchasing, freshly ground tortillas from the tortilleria that were, on every block in our little tiny beach town neighborhood, but to get my hands into the masa and actually press them and cook them by hand on this really old-fashioned, super smoky stove with a woman twice my age who'd been doing it for most of her life. It was incredible. And the sort of conversations that just a Spanish speaking classroom can never prepare you for. And, it's the sort of learning experience that doesn't happen in the classroom, but that every person can and should experience. And it's marvelous and it's exciting. And that's what I work to translate, not only to the parents, but also to the children with whom I work. Because one of the most disappointing things that I've encountered, and I continue to encounter in our travels, is that living experiences like what I've had, whether it's cooking school or working with some of these different chefs in restaurants and things all over the world, is that these experiences are not commonly available for the general public. But they're also very rarely, if ever, available to children. And to me, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because being able to feed yourself is a basic skill of human living. Absolutely. And I don't understand why we try to hold off on teaching our young people that, when it's something that they could be learning from infancy, just like reading and writing and talking and walking.
You're totally right. I really think that our diet culture is partly to blame. I'm sure there are other factors, but I'm just thinking, you're there, I'm here in the States.
Yes.
And I think it's probably the same thing in some of the other countries, but we're so focused on limiting,
Yes.
staying small, limiting our food, really having this entire morality around the food that we eat, because we need to be one size for our health. And I really do think that that whole diet culture has influenced parents not eating with their children, parents saying to children, don't eat. I actually have someone who told her child, I learned this recently, when she went out, because she was so controlling with her food, don't eat anything when you go out. Like, don't eat anything?
No.
Yes, it's sad. So what I'm hearing from you is the opposite of what I experience, the joy of showing children where the food comes from, which is another thing. Like, we're in a city and there's no farms right next to me that are growing fresh olives.
Right.
So I love that you're doing this.
It's a huge part, not only, as you say, of diet culture, but literally the food production all over the world. There is a very concerted effort to separate people from the source of their food.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't make any sense unless you consider that the people who benefit from that are the people who are trying to tell you that you don't need to prepare your food. I can do it for you because I can do it better. And often that better is faster, which, oftentimes we consider more convenient,
Yeah.
but it's also healthier in many cases for companies to claim that they can prepare the food better than we can ourselves. And 99.9% of the time, that's just not true. And so a lot of the process in which I am educating, especially parents, but really children of all ages, is that you do have the power to make your own food. And when you get your hands in and do it yourself, not only do you know and understand exactly what's in it, but you can control it too. So you can get exactly what you want out of the food.
I love that.
It's a powerful experience.
So tell me, where are you now? You're not in Mexico now?
No, we're not in Mexico right now. My family and I are in Tirana, the capital city of Albania in Eastern Europe. And before we came here, even I didn't know where that was. I've sent so many people running to a map to check. We're actually in Italy for the second time before we came here to Albania. And so if you look at a map and you know the boot of Italy and where the heel of that boot sticks out, we are just on the opposite side of the Adriatic from the heel of Italy's boot.
Oh, okay. That helps a little. I'll have to look at a map. I have to admit it.
Please do. As I said, it's an exercise in geography too. And the geography is very important because learning about the cuisine of Albania here, it's influenced by geography. There has been so much history of takeovers of, the Ottoman Empire and so many other influences that Italy and Italian food and Greece and Greek food and Turkey and Turkish food, they all have an impact on the local cuisine here. And it's fascinating to learn.
So what do people speak where you are?
They speak
Albanian.
And fortunately for us, because we didn't speak a word of Albanian before coming here, people are also really multilingual too. So I have carried on conversations in my steadily growing Albanian vocabulary, as well as in English, in Spanish, and in Italian too. I've even had some Japanese conversations as well. So it's all very helpful. In fact, our local market, one of the supermarkets closest to us, has a lot of items that are imported from Italy. So when we were first getting settled here, it was such a relief to go into the grocery store and find that items were labeled in a language that I could at least read and understand.
Wow. I'm just saying, wow. Okay, wow. I traveled, but nothing like what you're describing. It's a dream. It's a dream.
It's really an incredible blessing. And honestly, if you had told me 2 years ago that when we left Japan, we would end up here in Albania, I would have told you were crazy. But part of what we're doing, not just through our education, but literally with our lives, is demonstrating that when you take back that power into your own hands to create what you want, it's more than just creating the food that you want, but creating the life that you want. And so that's what we're doing.
I just have to say you're extraordinarily brave, because I don't know too many people that would pick up and just go to a foreign country. I do mean that. I'm very impressed. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you very much. I didn't know anyone when my husband and I left the United States. Like I said, that was back in 2007. And I didn't know anyone who had ever done anything like what we have done. And now that we've been doing this for more than a decade, it's amazing just how many more people I'm meeting who have been doing what we're doing, many for a lot longer than we have, but also how many more people are considering what we're doing, who want to learn more about branching out, about picking up and exploring the world, not just as, a 20-something backpacker taking a gap year to wander around Europe, but literally families just like ours with young children picking up and wandering the globe because they know that there is so much more to learn outside the four walls of the classroom.
You are so correct. So tell me what you do in your classroom right now.
It's our kitchen classroom. And essentially what we're doing is inviting people into our kitchen. I'm right here in my kitchen here in Albania. But whether it's in person or virtually, like the way we're having a conversation now, we invite people into our kitchen to teach them the different things that we are learning in our food preparation, in our travels, in our lives.
I love that. So give me an example of a typical class you would teach.
Oh, goodness. I would hesitate to say that anything is really typical. For
Okay.
starters, my sous chef is in bed right now. I don't know if he's sleeping yet. We're night owls, but my son is my sous chef. He is almost 8 years old, and he has literally been cooking with me since infancy. I wore a cloth sling and carried him, just like a pouch, but right here in front, or sometimes scooting over on the side from the time he was just a few weeks old. And some of my earliest memories of him and include food, like reaching out to grab the food that was on my plate, or drinking out of a little shot glass to have some water when he was just a few months old, and literally reaching out from that sling so that he could stir pots on the stove with me before he was.
My. Oh,
when I say that I really want parents to include their children in food preparation, I mean all children and all ages.
I hear that. I hear that. I love that philosophy. Again, I'm just thinking, don't touch the stove. You're going to burn your hands. Stay away. Stay away. And you're saying, no, come closer. Come with me.
Absolutely. In fact, I used to joke with parents at my school all the time that I'm going to have to write a book, and it's going to be called like Run with Scissors and Touch the Stove, because I literally am the person advocating for children to do all the things that we as parents want to tell our children don't do. And one of the biggest reasons is that learning by experience is such a more powerful lesson than anything we could say, especially to young children who learn most effectively through their senses. So something like touching a hot stove teaches what hot and don't touch mean, not as some abstract concept, but as something concrete that says, ouch, that hurts. I don't want to put my hand right there.
So I'm so curious. There's so many questions that parents have for me just in terms of nutrition. How do I feed my child? What do I do? Do I make very strict limits? We have breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. Or should they eat through the day when they're hungry? In terms of intuitive eating, I really work to teach parents to listen to their body and honor their hunger and fullness. I wonder how you incorporate that within your teaching. I'm curious.
Well, it's really interesting, because this is something that I've really only begun to consciously incorporate into my teaching over the past couple of years as we've branched outside of the school walls, because now I'm no longer just talking to and teaching the children directly, but I'm also working with the parents, and with the parents while they're working with their children. Yes. And what's interesting to me is that children don't tend to have these issues with listening to their hunger and fullness cues when it comes to intuitive eating. Children don't tend to push away foods because they think it's going to be bad for them, or they think they shouldn't eat it. They embrace everything and as much of everything as they want. And when they're satisfied, they naturally stop. And I really feel like it's a lot of those food rules that we as adults impose on children that start to negate that process of us actually listening to and trusting our bodies.
Absolutely.
When you have a parent who says, eat everything on your plate, and then only when your plate is clean can you get up from the table. Well, if you eat half of the food that's been plated, and then you're not hungry anymore, but you're forced to remain sitting at that table to eat all the food, what that's teaching the child is, it doesn't matter how I feel, I just have to do what someone else is telling me to do.
Yes.
And that causes such a dramatic conflict in the mind of the child. And so part of my effort now, working with parents, is to help them understand that despite their best intentions, some of the things that they want to say to children with respect to food might be harmful, and they might actually be providing a conflicting message to what they actually want to teach their children.
That makes so much sense. So I'm curious about something, just in terms of what I do. Is there, or have you experienced the type of diet culture that we have here in the States, in the UK, in Italy? I kind of feel like it is global, the issues around diet culture. So I'm curious. So you're validating what I believe and what I think.
It really saddens me, but yes, we have seen the detrimental impact of diet culture all over the world. And over the last couple of years, my family and I have literally circled the globe. We started out in Japan. Like I said, we went to Italy, the UK, Mexico, through the United States. We went back to Japan, Australia, New Zealand, back to the United States, back to Italy again, and now we're here in Albania. So 8 different countries, 4 different continents, 5 different community languages, and in every single place we have seen, like I said, those detrimental effects of diet culture, of people restricting food, of this morality of good foods and bad foods, of people telling other people what is enough to eat or not enough to eat. And as you said, it's difficult to really reconcile all that when, as parents, what we want to teach our children is to eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's all it is. That's as simple as breathing, as simple as being tired and going to sleep.
Like breathing, or like having to go to the bathroom. When we need to go, we go. And when we don't, we don't.
That's correct. We don't, it's unconscious. We don't think about it. But food.
And if we did, how much easier could life be? And that's part of the reason that I really encourage parents to allow and encourage children to play with their food, because that natural wanting to handle food, you know, to smell everything, to touch everything, to taste everything, to shake things around and listen to them rattle, you know, to examine every surface. Children naturally do that. That's a big part of how they learn, especially at a young age. But that process has been proven to be beneficial to learning throughout our lifetimes. The more interaction we have with all of our senses in learning materials, with concrete objects, the more neural connections it makes in the brain. And the more we understand and remember and make those connections to other things that we have learned in the past, making it easier to recall information in the future. And so for us to literally put items that are intended to be eaten in front of young children and then tell them, don't touch, don't taste, don't play with it, it doesn't make any sense. No, yeah. And when I discuss it with parents this way, they think, oh, yeah, that does make sense. But again, I understand why adults would tell children not to play with their food. As I said, growing up, when there wasn't always a lot of food, sometimes there's this fear that, okay, but they're going to mess things up. They're going to waste or ruin things. And maybe there isn't more. So there is this delicate balance that parents need to first become aware of the conflicting messages that they might be sending. And then they also need to practice taking a step back and observing their children and being able to watch and see what it is they need, what they respond to, so that they can provide more of that.
And may I say that this is spoken from a Montessori educator, an educator with how many 20 years of teaching experience?
Yes. I've been teaching for almost 23 years now. And yeah, that's the educator in me coming out saying,
it's wonderful.
Great teaching tool. And just like, you know, we wouldn't tell children not to play with their toys because, you know, it's designed to be both entertaining and engaging. Food is exactly the same thing. And it's immensely practical. And especially for families, for homes that don't have a lot, you know, you can use whatever is literally at your fingertips. And that's why I always encourage parents to include their children in what they're doing in the kitchen, because there's always something to learn from it.
But I am curious, as a woman of color, if your experiences in other countries has been different from country to country.
perfectly reasonable question. And yes, my experiences have been different in, different countries. And in fact, my experiences are also very different from my husband's experiences and from our son's experience. My husband is Caucasian, and so our son is biracial. And the fact that both of us are born and raised in the United States and native English speakers also very dramatically impacts the way that people interact with us as we travel the globe. So the idea that any one person or group of people will have the same experience is as ridiculous as expecting everybody to like the same foods or the same color.
Oh, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for answering that.
No, not at all. It's interesting because I don't know that I would have come to this journey of mindful, intuitive eating and, like you said, intuitive living had it not been for some of the interactions that I had with people in Japan. As most people know, the Japanese diet is very rice and vegetable based, and people tend to be smaller, just generally smaller in stature, as well as in physical size than people in the United States. And so that was a rather challenging thing to sort of grapple with during the decade that we lived and worked in Japan. And I remember very clearly a specific incident where I was teaching a Mommy and Me class, and a little girl came up to me after class and she asked me if the reason I was so big was because I ate too much food, because that's what her mommy said. It's amazing to me because, like so many interactions that I had with Japanese people, there was absolutely no malice intended whatsoever. This was what she had learned, and she had a very honest, curious question, and so she approached me and she asked, and I really and truly appreciated that. And so I bent down to this little girl who couldn't have been more than about 3 or 4 years old, and I told her that yes, I probably ate more food than she did or than her mommy did. And I was bigger, so I needed more food, but that I was the size and the shape I am because that's the way God made me. And I was perfectly healthy and perfectly happy. And she was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And she walked away thinking, well, that's perfectly normal. That's just the way she was made. But it caused me to think so much about the messages that, whether consciously or unconsciously, we are sending to our children. And this idea that people should all be one shape, one size, one color, speak one language, do whatever the same, it's really prevalent all over the world, but especially in very homogenous cultures or communities. And so a huge part of our travels is not only learning, but also educating the people who come into contact with us. And I have been the first and only Black person that a lot of people that we have encountered have ever actually met face to face or talked to. And so smashing stereotypes is a lot of fun for me.
It's shocking. It's shocking from where I'm sitting.
It really is shocking. And I've got another great story that I have to share with you because it's also food related, but it was so much fun. Early on in our days in Japan, I had the opportunity to substitute teach for one of my husband's colleagues. And in this English language class for Japanese students, the class had a practice of asking and answering questions going around the circle. And it was basic introductory things to get the children talking. So I'm substitute teaching this class of children between the ages of about 8 and 10. And they ask, what's your name? How old are you? What school do you go to? And they're going around asking the question and then answering for the next person. And they get to the question of what's your favorite food? And I thought, oh, this is a great one. I love this topic. Let me hear what these kids have to say. And they said all the traditional answers that you would expect people to say. One child said, I like pizza. And somebody else said, I like hamburgers and I like sushi. And they're going around, and then all the children at the end, they turn and all eyes are on me. And the child next to me asks, what's your favorite food? And I thought about it for a bit. because I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should be telling them, like something healthy, like a vegetable. I'm like, no, I'm going to be honest with these children. And I said, you know what? I love chocolate cake. And so the children were like, oh, yeah, of course. And one little boy's eyes just got as big as dinner plates. And he leaned in with a gasp and he said, oh, that's why you're brown.
Okay.
People who want to come up and they check, to see, does that come off? And no, obviously it's not the result of eating too much chocolate cake, but I do love chocolate cake.
Oh my God, so do I.
Well, when you think about it from a child's perspective, it does make perfect sense, because I remember hearing stories as a child that it was good to eat carrots because they're good for your eyes, but don't eat too much because you could turn orange. And I remember looking at my mom and laughing, going, I don't think I'm going to turn orange. But by that logic, it made perfect sense.
It did. And I'm thinking the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and she turned
Violet Beauregard. Violet turns violet.
Look, our favorite color.
Violet, of course.
Oh,
yeah.
You are.
And I wonder, how many parents are telling their children, these horrible stories about, well, you need to eat this food, but don't eat too much or else, something horrible is going to happen to you.
Yes.
My son recalls a story of some adult telling him that it was important that he eat all of his food, at one point, because if he didn't, he was going to stop growing. And he came back to me later looking at me like, Mommy, that's not true, is it? And I said, no, of course not. It's not true. He said, well, then why would somebody say something like that? That just doesn't make any sense. And I've explained to him, and we've explained time and time again, that quite often adults say things to children in an effort to encourage them to do something that they think is good for them. Yeah. He said, but it's a lie. Why would you lie? My exactly was, we don't lie to you because we want you to know that you can trust what we say is true. But a lot of adults don't think about that because that's what happened to them as children. That's what adults told them. Yes. And so they're repeating those same words. But we are choosing to do things differently.
I see that, and I see your passion. I think I found you in a Facebook group, and I was just, you posted something that said, I'm too much for this world, I'm too big, I'm too loud, I travel too much. And I said, I got to have coffee with this woman. I just adore you. I don't know you, but I want to know you.
Well, and I appreciate you reaching out too, because a big part of what we do in our travels is really just making friends, getting to know people. And so much of that happens over food or over drinks. So it might be a virtual coffee date like this, or a video chat, or like we've done a lot here, or water, whatever you're drinking. Or it could be like what we do everywhere we go, which is we make new friends and we meet up in people's kitchens and we cook together. And sometimes we speak the same common language. Sometimes we share some third or fourth language. Sometimes we don't speak much of the same language at all, but the food speaks.
Look at that.
The process of demonstrating how the dishes that we want to share come together is an amazing way to communicate. And I learned so much of my Japanese language skills in friends' kitchens, cooking, learning how they prepared foods and teaching them how I like to prepare foods. And it's just such a marvelous, marvelous exchange.
I see that, a way of bonding. Karen, so now that I've gotten to know you a little bit better and you've shared your pearls of wisdom and your enthusiasm with the rest of the world, whoever's watching this, if someone wants to be in touch with you and learn more about your kitchen classroom, playing with their food, are there any programs that you offer? Is there any way for people to learn about a little bit more about you and play with food with you?
Absolutely. The best place to get to know us even better is to go to our website, which is ourkitchenclassroom.com. And we have a variety of things that we share all over social media as well. We have a YouTube channel, a Facebook business page. Okay. Play with Your Food is our online community where we share pictures and different recipes and inspirations and stories. And I have an Instagram page that's under my name, KarenM.Ricks.
Okay.
And We are currently and planning for future culinary and cultural tours. So we've been here in Albania for a few months already. And I've had students who, whether they're passing through or want to actually come and spend time living in Albania, where we have met in person, face to face, or having virtual cooking classes online.
So we're not talking about just children. I'm sorry, we're not just talking about children.
No, not just children. I teach children of all ages. So whether it's an individual or a family or a group of friends, we could get together and cook and learn and share. So we're doing that right now here in Albania. We're also preparing for a return to my son's hometown in Japan in the springtime. So if there are people who are watching this video who are interested in traveling Japan, in learning about living and eating and exploring like a local and getting some of the sort of cultural experiences that you won't get if you just fly to Tokyo and wander around, you're welcome to come and join our culinary and cultural tour of Japan. And I will make sure to give you a link so that people can sign up for an appointment on my calendar, and we can talk about how they might participate in this tour. And I want to say it's important to note that the reason that we have arranged these culinary and cultural tours is not necessarily just for individuals, and it's not just about cooking, but it's really about having the sort of immersive educational experience for children of all ages. In fact, I had one family that passed through about a month or so ago. They were touring Europe, and this was 2 parents and their 5 children, and they all gathered around right here in our kitchen here in Tirana, Albania, to prepare some traditional foods. So
I love it.
Literally, children of all ages.
Children of all ages. I will make sure to have a link to your website and your social media so that people can find you, because
you so much.
You need to be found.
And it starts by empowering them, teaching them how to prepare the food that nourishes them and the people they love.